self-inquiry, I told you before.
Yes.
Self-inquiry is the key word here. Now, you have a self-inquiry because something has encouraged you to have a self-inquiry. Now, without that self-inquiry, you go nowhere, because we have seen in the recent past, there are many scholars who come and display their knowledge. They'll use so many Pali words, they'll use all the things that are stated in the Abhidhamma. And what are you displaying? Number one is the knowledge, which is of no use for anyone who is going in search of the truth. And secondly, the person who is elaborating on all these by way of, the theoretical knowledge is also very much attached to the person. It is a person who speaks, you see. So one who is acquiring the status of a person, it is very difficult for that person to describe anything that is related to the truth. So therefore, that, come to a notion, come to an opinion, come to a particular concept itself is a preventive factor. Then there's another one, is this time factor. Everything is time bound. Okay, I'll meditate very hard today, and tomorrow I'll get somewhere. Or I will, start observing still from now on every poor day. By end of the year, I will be attained, so on, or sotapanna. Or you will start on a journey and start, giving away your wealth, over time, and that will after some time. So the time factor. The time is also something which is connected to the person. There is a person, and the person believes in time. But here, as I told you, the truth is already with you. You only need to have a commitment to find out within you. So therefore, the time is irrelevant here. Whether you see it today or tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Now, what is important, this is again somewhat subtle. Well, if you attain some kind of a status in seeing the truth, let's say next week, it will happen in the present moment of that time.
Okay.
You see, so you are only using this time factor, which is also another preventive factor. And the third one is this, Buddha said, my Dhamma is a raft, and this raft helps you to get across the river, but don't carry the raft afterwards. You just leave everything behind, because the Dhamma helps you to understand this and then go in search of this, and once it is realized, then you don't need to carry it again. You don't even have to use the word Dhamma. So, so that's another one. So you don't get yourself indulged in Dhamma so much and say, this is this, I am this. I have come across people who are even saying that, I am in this stage, something. It's not necessary. It's not there. The person who is so speaking is a person. I mean, your final realization is to see that there is no person. Nothing exists except for your thoughts. So if that is the case, all what you say, you see, as long as you are trying to see this reality from an eye of a person, then it won't work. Because the beginning should be, who is the person who is suffering? Who is the person who is enjoying? Who is the person who is experiencing? That is the inward looking exercise. The moment you understand that there is no person except for your belief that there is a person by way of the attachment to mind and body, other than that there is nothing. It's very difficult to, because that's why I said the language is problem.
Yes.
Because the language is created to describe what we are experiencing.
Yeah. So now you happen to say, sir, like time, the time factor, that's the second factor you brought in. Now I have noticed, I think in meditation, like perhaps if you really meditate, you just don't feel the time. You don't feel the time passing. But then, now we have been in a very deep discussion of things. So our viewers who are just out there might think, okay, if, then how are we going to manage things? Like if we just don't care about the time factor, are we to, I mean, we might get late for work if we just go on, sit, meditate, and, you know, with all that. What can you say
Well,
to
your
our viewers?
question is very much related to the belief of an existence of a person.
Definitely.
So I cannot answer that because you are asking that question as a person. Yes. And secondly, I didn't mean that whatever you do tomorrow, you need to plan. Now, I came to this place on time because I left home, you know, thinking, okay, if I leave home at a particular time, I can get there. But the time that I am referring to is your indulgence in the living of in the next moment.
Okay.
So all what I am saying is that if you, as a person, you live in the present moment. But if you ask most of the people, you are living in the past or you are living in the future. And therefore all your actions are devoid of the present moment. And therefore you live in the next moment always.
Sure. Yeah.
And that is what I was referring to.
Okay.
But
once
when
again,
you
language,
meditate,
I suppose.
no, when you meditate again,
Yes.
you see the mistakes. I'll tell you several mistakes when people meditate. First of all, the moment you sit with a posture, and now who meditates? It's a person meditates. I meditate. So you are making a blunder from the beginning. I meditate. I sit. Now I think. Okay, that's. And the second mistake a lot of people make is that using the language in your mind. You are using a particular language.
Yeah.
But you are not using the language of heart. Even extending metta, karuna, you can use the language of heart without using the words.
Okay.
Then the thirdly, you are also making a mistake by trying to hold the mind. It's beautiful. You hold the mind, you don't allow the mind to move. When the mind tries to move, you hold it again. You try to move, you hold it again. You keep on doing that. It's a very pleasurable moment. But what happens? The mind is very smart. The mind allows you to enjoy that moment. But the moment you get up, it comes back. And you have focused your mind for that moment. Once you come out of that posture, the mind has taken you over again. So it's a moment. Of course, meditation helps people in so many ways, and I was told that even in United States, in cardiology units, they get the patients to practice anapanasati, and that certainly helps. But in search of truth, this might not be very helpful, because what happens is you focus your mind, you keep your mind in the moment. What is expected of you is to look inside and see when a thought arises, you know that the thought has arisen. And if the thought has caused some kind of a feeling, then you ask yourself, who is this person who is either getting pleasure out of this feeling, or the person who is suffering from this? Who is that person?
So when you ask that, you don't use the language. It's just the language of the heart.
Absolutely. Yeah, because since I had to communicate, I am using this language.
Yeah.
You only simply look for this person. Look for this. You
something
keep
like
looking
being
for this.
aware of.
Yes, and then, and what finally helps you to understand is that there is awareness. There is some kind of a consciousness that is awareness,
Yes.
which is existing prior to the arising of thoughts.
Yes.
And that's the one that you need to look at over a period of time, because you have been a human being. And as you know, first is the person, and then second it's a personality. The consciousness or the awareness has been sucked in by the mind, because the mind has taken control over the awareness. So here the idea is to bring this awareness out, and this awareness itself will take care of you afterwards. And the mind is there only to get you to believe in this person and then get that person to taste through the five senses, and that's a function of the mind. Awareness is the basis, the entire, the framework within which the mind operates, but it is fully obscured by the functions of the mind.
Okay. Now, if I just ask you something like this, can you just propose some creative ways of getting rid of delusion?
I think you are using the correct word by saying the creative ways, because otherwise what happens is that we are used to practicing traditional ways. Now what happens is that the self-realization, when you say self-realization, it differs from one person to another. And number one is, of course, this self-inquiry that I kept on saying. And it also helps a lot of people to look at from time to time. Some of the scholars have said various things, and you need to try and grasp this. Now, some long years ago, this Mark Twain, who mentioned that nothing exists. These are exactly the words of Buddha. Nothing exists. No world, no sun, no moon, and not even you, but the thought. And that's something that you can try to probe.
Okay.
You know, just find out. I'm not suggesting that that's the whole truth or nothing but the truth. Now Buddha said absolutely something similar. He kept on saying that there is no person, and try to see that, try to understand once you realize. Then also what I said before, that there is nothing called next moment. It is only a thought. Your next moment is only a thought. Your planning, the next moment is done now, but the next moment will be experienced only when it arises, which is a very subtle thing, but it's not difficult to understand when you say there is no next moment. Or you can even practice this. Forget that you have a next moment. And probably I can tell you that you will do your present moment much better if you do not live in the next moment. People have not tried this out. Similarly, when you say there was no past, it never happened. The events never happened. It's simply you remember because you have registered them. The mind has registered your past, the most essential things. If I ask anyone, what did you have for your breakfast? Some people don't even remember. The reason being, it's not important, so you have not registered. And some of the things you remember very well. So and so has said this to me. So and so has reported me, you know, to someone. You remember it. So that is registered, and that you call past. Whereas there are a million things that have happened. Or in other words, like you said, creative way, why don't you just say nothing happened in the past, which is very similar.
And
but the language will prevent you from believing that. If I say no, nothing happened in the past, it's only what I have registered.
Yes.
Because the language is not going to help you. So therefore, you need to turn the language the other way around and ask the same question. And it will probably help you to understand.
And I think so, like as you were trying to explain, when I was just listening to you, I was aware of myself, and then I thought like, yes, all of us, if you consider almost all of us, I think we waste our time living in the past and living in the future. And to think of it, we have never really lived in the present moment. Is that, what do you think?
Which is very true. In fact, these are the very words of Buddha. Don't live in the past, don't live in the future. And all you have is your present moment. Now here Buddha himself has said this. But we don't give that much of a concentration to this kind of sayings of Buddha. You know, we are trying to take the difficult part. We are trying to take the hard part of everything. But whereas it's subtle, but it has to be simple. And when you say, do not live in the next moment, will enhance your ability to do a lot of things in the present moment. And that is, I think, what is important at the moment. And at the same time, since you asked this question, the creative ways of trying to see this, I would also mention that, you know, sometimes we say we all are one, and the language can never describe that. The reason why we say we all are one, the trees, the animals, then ourselves, the sky, the sun, we all are one, because if I don't exist, none of those things exist. So it's just one experience altogether. The problem is that the duality, we separate ourselves. This is me, this is you, and those are flowers. But in our experience, when we are experiencing, we all are one. One cannot exist without the other. So, but when you say in mundane terms, we all are one, no one will understand.
Yes. Yes. Now, sir, since we have time, I just thought I would ask now something which came into my mind while you were just carrying on the discussion. Once again, as you said, it is important when you think of a person. Now, you just happen to say, like, some people just say that they have attained a stage of sainthood or Sohan or Sakradagami. So that is, of course, thinking as a person. Now, now if someone comes to you and tell that, what should you do? Should you just keep worrying about that person? Or that's what people do. Because thinking, however much we tell them not to think as just to get rid of the concept of the person, they just they just love going behind someone who says that he has attained sainthood, or at least it may be true or it might not be true. But what do you think?
Well, there are two ways of looking at this. One is, if someone comes to you and say that I have achieved something, that itself is a lie, because I am not saying that person has either achieved it or not achieved it, because the whole Dhamma revolves around seeing no self.
Yes.
So if someone says, I have gained this stage or this status, if there is no person, there cannot be an I. So that itself is a lie. In spite of how you try to, I'm not saying what that person is saying a lie, but what I'm saying is that this I is not there. So there is absolutely no necessity for anyone who has seen that there is no I to say that I have reached this.
But don't you think like he might be using once again language to make the other person understand?
Right. Let's put it this way. You know, a person who has very clearly realized, now this is not knowledge, this is wisdom.
Definitely.
So it is very difficult for such a person to proclaim that I am so and so. Even now, let me describe the other one.
Okay.
Now, it is, on the other hand, it is my mental structure on the other person to make a judgment also. Now, although I said it that it is not practically possible for such a person to declare himself to have achieved or anything, at the same time, I also cannot jump to a conclusion that this person is right or wrong. So these are paradoxes in life, because I am describing my own mental construction on him. So if I say he is not supposed to say this, then I am also wrong. So what leads to all this? It leads to just one thing. In my way of thinking, I believe that all these things lead to nothing but just silence.
Okay.
That's probably the answer that you can give in language, because we have to use language.
Yeah, so I guess when it comes to terms of language, as you said, for this question, silence is the best answer. Now, sir, since we have around 5 minutes more, I would like you to just sum up our discussion today, or add anything that you would like to share with our viewers.
Yeah, I think in the last 2 years or so, I have a small network, and we all call ourselves as people who are going after this self-inquiry. And it is very necessary that since we are a country which has preserved Buddhism for over so many thousands of years, that we need to be very pragmatic in what we do. Now, particularly since I am in the tourism profession, we have thousands and thousands of people who are coming from the Western world looking for this truth. And I sincerely hope that they will not be disappointed here after coming to Sri Lanka. If they are disappointed, it is only ourselves that we have to blame.
Our weakness, yeah.
The point is that if they begin to see the ritualistic practices, and there's a lot of Pali being chanted, and then, you know, they hardly get a chance of even this our discussion that we have had. I don't think that such people will get an opportunity of even having a discussion of this nature, which will open their hearts and minds. I have had the opportunity of addressing so many tourists, you know, those who come for yoga, those who come for meditation. So now I am invited for such occasions, and I'm impressed by the attention that they are paying for this kind of thing, which they don't otherwise hear from any other locations in Sri Lanka.
Definitely.
So I think that is something that worries us from the point of view of tourism, because we have so much to give them.
I think, sir, not only from the point of view of tourism, which is very true, I think even some of our Buddhists who are, you know, who are born to be Buddhists also see Buddhism as just rituals. Some of there are some people still like that. I mean, irrespective of all the sermons, all the bana, you know, like obviously these people perhaps they just don't.
So very simply,
Yeah.
whom are you nurturing? You
Yes,
are
that's
nurturing
true.
I, the person, and the personality, and that's not Buddhism. That's not
Definitely.
Buddhism.
Definitely. Okay, sir. So, thank you very much for dedicating your precious time on behalf of us, on behalf of the viewers. I think viewers, we just had a deep